Okay guys, today we are going to talk about volume. In our last video we talked about perimeter and area, and so the final thing that we're going to have to be able to identify in 5th grade is volume. So if we look at, if we think about what we've already done with perimeter and area, we know that perimeter is the distance around an object. So if I have this square, I know that the perimeter is all the way around that object. For area, you remember that we know that area is the amount of space that an object takes up. So area is all this flat space in here. It's like carpet, paint, or grass on a playground. Now, volume is where things get a little bit different. When we have volume, that is the amount of space inside of an object. Now, for there to be space inside of an object, we can't use these flat figures like we've been using of squares and rectangles and things like that. To find volume, we have to have a 3D shape, like, and excuse my drawing because you know I'm not an artist, but like a cube. So I have this cube right here, and I want to know how much space is inside of that cube. So how do we figure that out? Well, we have to multiply three things together. Remember perimeter? We added all the sides. In area, we multiplied one length times one width. And in volume, we're just going to take it one more step further. For volume, we have to do one length times one width times a height. Because now we're working with a 3D shape. In an area, we only had the length and the width to work with. In a volume, we now have length, we have width, and we have height. That's what makes it a three-dimensional shape. These are the three dimensions. 1, 2, 3 dimensions. So now we know we're working with a three-dimensional shape. So let's look at the next one. Let's say if I had let me just draw this cube again. Sometimes when you have these questions on exams and things like that, it's going to fill it with little cubes for you, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But other times it'll just tell you the measurements. You'll know that this is 3 inches, this is 4 inches, and this is 6 inches. So we know what the length is, we know what the width is, and I know what the height is, how tall it is. So I know that my formula for volume is length times width times height, and if you ever forget that, it's on that mathematics chart that you're always going to have. They always will have the formula for volume, which is always going to be length times width times height. So you should never forget it because it's always on this mathematics chart. So length is 3 times the width, which is 4, times the height, which is 6. Okay? 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 times 6 is 72. Now remember when we talked and we have to include the measurement, and remember when we talked about area, I told you that area had that little squared up in the corner? Well, that was because they multiplied two different attributes. This one, we are multiplying how many attributes? 3. So we say it's 72 inches cubed. So we put a little 3 up there because that's how many numbers that we multiplied. So we say it's 72 inches cubed. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's say that I give you this rectangular prism. It looks very similar to the last one, just a little bit more stretched out. That's what makes it a rectangular prism. I'm going to say that the length is 7 inches, the width is 2 inches, and the height is 4 inches. So I want to know what is the volume of this shape. How much space is inside of this figure? So I know that my volume is length times width times height. So my length is 7, my width is 2, and my height is 4. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 times 4 is 56 inches cubed. We got to have that little 3 up there. 56 inches cubed. So that was our volume for that shape. So the things to remember are that we always have that mathematics chart to refer to make sure that we're finding the volume of a figure. We know that we're multiplying the 3 dimensions because when we find volume, it's always of a 3-dimensional figure. We know those dimensions are length, width, and height. and we know that we have to multiply them, and after we multiply them, we have to have whatever the measurement is, like inches, with that little cubed up in the corner. Or if it was centimeters, you would have centimeters cubed. Or if it was miles, you would have miles cubed. It would be whatever cubed because you're working with 3 different dimensions. The only other thing you need to realize is that sometimes, just because you see a 3-dimensional figure, like this shape, does not mean you are always going to be finding the volume. A lot of kids see a 3-dimensional shape and they go, oh, done, find the volume, and they don't even read the problem. Well, they're not always wanting to have you find the volume. Sometimes they're asking for other things. For example, they may label it all for you, 6 inches, 2 inches, 4 inches. They may get all that done for you. And then the problem may say, what's the perimeter of the bottom? Well, you just heard the word perimeter. And we know to get the perimeter, you have to add all the sides. Well, we're not going to add everything on this shape. My question to you was the perimeter of the bottom, or the base. What's the perimeter of the base? Well, that's when all we do is focus on the base. So if I look at this base, I've just traced the base. I got 6 inches, 2 inches, and the perimeter is at all the sides. So I got 6 inches over here, and I got 2 inches over here. 6 and 6 is 12. 12 and 2 is 14. 14 and 2 is 16 inches. That is my perimeter. So they may have asked the perimeter, or they may have said, what is the area of the base? And we know the area is length times width. And again, this is the base, so there's my length, there's my width. So the area would be 12 inches squared. Or they could have said, what's the volume? So you never really know what they're going to ask. You always have to be ready. And we know that volume is length times width times height. So we have the length, the width, and the height, which is 6 times 2 is 12, times 4 is 48 inches cubed.